Claire Bennett had been dating Ethan Wallace for nearly 2 months, carefully waiting for the right moment to introduce him to the most important part of her life. Her 4-year-old daughter, Lily. She had learned, through painful past experience, that not every man was ready to embrace the responsibility of a ready-made family, and she had wanted to be certain of Ethan's genuine feelings before risking her daughter's heart as well as her own. That afternoon, Ethan had surprised her with a visit to the small bakery where she worked, arriving just as her sister dropped off Lily for a quick visit during Claire's break. Lily, delighted and curious, had rushed straight toward her mother, her small arms wrapping around Claire's legs while she beamed up at the unfamiliar man standing nearby. "Mommy, who's this?" Lily asked innocently, her wide eyes studying Ethan with open curiosity. Claire felt her heart skip anxiously as she turned toward Ethan, watching carefully for his reaction. "Ethan, this is my daughter, Lily," she said, forcing calm confidence into her voice despite the nervous flutter in her chest. "Lily, this is my friend Ethan." For a long, uncomfortable moment, Ethan said nothing at all, his expression shifting rapidly from confusion into something considerably colder. "You have a daughter?" he asked finally, his voice carrying an edge of betrayal that Claire hadn't anticipated. "You never mentioned that." "I was going to tell you soon," Claire replied carefully, aware of the customers nearby beginning to take notice of the tension building between them. "I wanted to be sure about us first, before involving Lily." Ethan's expression hardened further, disappointment and something uglier flickering across his face. "I'm not interested in playing stepfather to someone else's kid," he said bluntly, his voice considerably louder than Claire would have liked, drawing several curious, uncomfortable glances from customers seated nearby. "You should have told me from the start, Claire. I don't have time for this kind of complication." Claire felt humiliation crash over her instantly, her cheeks burning as she registered the pitying, judgmental stares now directed toward her and her confused, innocent daughter. "Ethan, please, not here," she said quietly, desperation evident in her trembling voice. "There's nothing more to discuss," Ethan replied coldly, already turning toward the door. "This clearly isn't going to work." He left without another word, the bakery's small bell chiming cheerfully behind him, an absurd contrast to the devastating silence he left in his wake. Claire stood frozen for a moment, humiliation and heartbreak crashing over her simultaneously as she felt Lily's small hand tighten around her own, sensing clearly that something had gone terribly wrong. "Mommy, why is that man mad?" Lily asked softly, confusion and worry evident in her small voice. Claire knelt quickly, forcing a reassuring smile onto her face despite her overwhelming emotion. "Everything's fine, sweetheart," she said gently, though her voice wavered slightly. "Let's get you back to Aunt Rachel, all right?" Once Lily had been safely returned to her waiting aunt outside, Claire found herself needing a single moment alone, stepping quickly through the bakery's side entrance into the quiet alley beyond, desperate to compose herself before returning to finish her shift. She hadn't expected anyone to witness her private moment of devastation. That man was a fool. Claire startled at the deep, calm voice, turning quickly to find Dante Marchetti standing near his sleek black car, parked discreetly along the alley's edge. She recognized him immediately, a regular customer who visited the bakery several times weekly, always polite, always composed, and always surrounded by an unmistakable air of quiet authority that made the entire staff subtly straighten whenever he entered. "Mr. Marchetti," Claire said quickly, embarrassment flooding through her at the realization he had likely witnessed the entire humiliating scene. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize anyone was out here." "There's nothing to apologize for," Dante replied evenly, his tone carrying quiet, genuine sincerity rather than any pity that might have made the moment considerably more painful. "I happened to be waiting for my car to be brought around when I overheard everything through the open window." Claire felt her cheeks burning even more deeply at this admission, mortification evident clearly in her flustered expression. "That's certainly not how I wanted my afternoon to go," she admitted honestly, attempting weakly to inject some humor into the devastating situation. Dante studied her closely, something thoughtful and genuinely respectful evident in his composed gaze. "For what it's worth," he said sincerely, "any man unwilling to embrace a mother's love for her child isn't worth a single moment of your tears." Claire studied him carefully, surprised by the genuine warmth evident beneath his usually reserved, businesslike demeanor. "Thank you for saying that," she said softly, gratitude evident clearly in her tired voice. "I should get back inside. My shift isn't quite finished yet." "Of course," Dante replied, though something in his tone suggested he wasn't quite ready to end their unexpected conversation. "Might I offer you a ride home once you've finished? It's clearly been a difficult afternoon, and I imagine the last thing you need is a long walk home afterward." Claire hesitated, uncertain exactly how to respond to such unexpected kindness from someone she barely knew. Though something about Dante's genuine, composed sincerity made her lower her guard slightly despite herself. "I'd appreciate that," she admitted honestly, surprised by her own willingness to accept as she turned to return inside, finishing the remainder of her shift with considerably more composure than she had anticipated managing. Claire found herself unable to stop thinking about the quiet, unexpected kindness Dante Marchetti had shown her during one of the most humiliating moments of her recent life, entirely unaware of just how significantly that single, unplanned encounter would soon transform her entire future. When Claire's shift finally ended, she found Dante exactly where he'd promised, leaning casually against his car in the quiet alley, his expression calm and patient despite what had likely been a considerable wait. "You didn't have to actually wait," she said, genuine surprise evident clearly in her tired voice as she approached. "I said I would," Dante replied simply, opening the passenger door for her with quiet, unassuming courtesy. "I meant it." Claire settled into the comfortable leather seat, exhaustion from the emotionally draining afternoon finally catching up with her fully. As Dante pulled smoothly out of the alley, silence stretched between them for several minutes, though it carried none of the discomfort she might have expected from such an unusual, unplanned arrangement. "You don't have to talk about it," Dante said eventually, his tone carefully neutral. "But if you'd like to, I'm willing to listen." Claire considered his offer carefully, surprised by her own willingness to actually accept it. "Lily's father left when she was barely 6 months old," she admitted honestly, the words coming easier than she expected. "Since then, I've dated a handful of times, though most men lose interest the moment they realize what dating me actually means. Taking on a child who isn't theirs." Dante's jaw tightened slightly, though his voice remained calm and measured. "That reflects poorly on them," he said firmly, "not on you or your daughter." Claire studied him carefully, genuine warmth spreading through her at his simple, sincere reassurance. "I appreciate you saying that," she said honestly. "Most people offer sympathy, but you're the first person in a long while to actually sound genuinely angry on my behalf." Dante glanced toward her briefly, before returning his attention to the road. "Watching someone treat you and your daughter so carelessly in public, no less, it's difficult not to feel genuine anger," he admitted honestly, a rare note of vulnerability entering his usually composed tone. Claire found herself smiling slightly, despite the day's earlier heartbreak. Something about Dante's quiet, protective sincerity offering unexpected comfort. "Can I ask you something?" she said carefully. "I've noticed you at the bakery for months now, always polite, always composed. What exactly is it you do?" Dante considered his answer carefully before responding honestly. "I run several businesses throughout the city," he said, deliberately vague regarding the full, complicated truth. "Nothing that would interest you much in casual conversation." Claire studied him thoughtfully, sensing there was considerably more beneath his careful answer, though she chose not to press further, respecting his evident reluctance to share additional details so early in their unexpected acquaintance. "Fair enough," she said simply. As they approached her modest apartment building, Dante pulled carefully to the curb, studying the surrounding neighborhood with quiet, careful attention. Claire hadn't quite expected. "Thank you for the ride," she said sincerely, gathering her things to exit. "And for listening. It's been a considerably difficult afternoon." "You're remarkably strong," Dante said suddenly, his tone carrying genuine admiration rather than empty flattery. "Raising a child alone, facing that kind of public rejection with such quiet dignity, that takes real courage." Claire felt her cheeks warming at his sincere words, genuine gratitude evident clearly in her soft expression. "Thank you," she said honestly. "That means more than you probably realize, especially today." As she exited the car, Dante rolled down his window slightly. "Would it be all right if I checked in on you occasionally?" he asked, genuine sincerity evident clearly in his composed tone. "Simply as a friend, given everything you're managing alone." Claire considered his request carefully, surprised by her own genuine willingness to accept. "I'd like that," she admitted honestly, a small, genuine smile forming on her tired face. Over the following days, Dante made good on his word, stopping by the bakery regularly. Always polite and considerate, never pushing beyond what Claire seemed genuinely comfortable accepting. Their conversations gradually deepened, moving beyond simple pleasantries into genuine, meaningful exchanges about life, resilience, and the quiet challenges of building something worthwhile despite considerable difficulty. One afternoon, nearly 2 weeks after their first unexpected encounter, Dante arrived at the bakery just as Rachel dropped Lily off again for a brief visit. Claire tensed instinctively, memories of Ethan's cruel rejection still fresh despite the passing days. To her surprise, Dante knelt immediately to Lily's level, his usually composed, authoritative demeanor softening entirely into gentle warmth. "Hello there," he said kindly. "I'm Dante. Your mother speaks very highly of you." Lily studied him with open curiosity, entirely unbothered by his considerable size and commanding presence. "Do you like cupcakes?" she asked directly, holding up a small, half-eaten treat from the bakery's display. Dante smiled genuinely, something rare and unguarded crossing his composed features. "I happen to like cupcakes very much," he replied warmly. Claire watched this simple, genuine exchange with quiet, overwhelming emotion, understanding clearly that Dante's gentle patience with her daughter revealed something considerably more meaningful than his careful words alone ever could. Neither she nor Dante yet realized clearly just how significantly this small, unassuming friendship had already begun laying the foundation for something considerably deeper, and how soon that foundation would face challenges neither of them could have anticipated. When Claire's shift finally ended, she found Dante exactly where he'd promised, leaning casually against his car in the quiet alley, his expression calm and patient, despite what had likely been a considerable wait. "You didn't have to actually wait," she said, genuine surprise evident clearly in her tired voice as she approached. "I said I would," Dante replied simply, opening the passenger door for her with quiet, unassuming courtesy. "I meant it." Claire settled into the comfortable leather seat, exhaustion from the emotionally draining afternoon finally catching up with her fully. As Dante pulled smoothly out of the alley, silence stretched between them for several minutes, though it carried none of the discomfort she might have expected from such an unusual, unplanned arrangement. "You don't have to talk about it," Dante said eventually, his tone carefully neutral. "But if you'd like to, I'm willing to listen." Claire considered his offer carefully, surprised by her own willingness to actually accept it. "Lily's father left when she was barely 6 months old," she admitted honestly, the words coming easier than she expected. "Since then, I've dated a handful of times, though most men lose interest the moment they realize what dating me actually means. Taking on a child who isn't theirs." Dante's jaw tightened slightly, though his voice remained calm and measured. "That reflects poorly on them," he said firmly, "not on you or your daughter." Claire studied him carefully, genuine warmth spreading through her at his simple, sincere reassurance. "I appreciate you saying that," she said honestly. "Most people offer sympathy, but you're the first person in a long while to actually sound genuinely angry on my behalf." Dante glanced toward her briefly before returning his attention to the road. Watching someone treat you and your daughter so carelessly, in public no less, it's difficult not to feel genuine anger, he admitted honestly, a rare note of vulnerability entering his usually composed tone. Claire found herself smiling slightly, despite the day's earlier heartbreak. Something about Dante's quiet, protective sincerity offering unexpected comfort. "Can I ask you something?" she said carefully. "I've noticed you at the bakery for months now, always polite, always composed. What exactly is it you do?" Dante considered his answer carefully before responding honestly. "I run several businesses throughout the city," he said, deliberately vague regarding the full, complicated truth. "Nothing that would interest you much in casual conversation." Claire studied him thoughtfully, sensing there was considerably more beneath his careful answer, though she chose not to press further, respecting his evident reluctance to share additional details so early in their unexpected acquaintance. "Fair enough," she said simply, as they approached her modest apartment building. Dante pulled carefully to the curb, studying the surrounding neighborhood with quiet, careful attention Claire hadn't quite 4 years earlier. Claire had believed her life was finally falling into place. She had been engaged to Ryan Castellano, a charming man she had dated for nearly 2 years, their relationship seemingly stable and genuinely happy right up until she discovered she was pregnant with Lily. What should have been joyful news instead marked the beginning of everything unraveling. Entirely, Ryan had reacted with initial shock, quickly followed by a distance Claire hadn't anticipated from someone she had believed loved her completely. He had attended a handful of prenatal appointments, offered half-hearted reassurances about their future together, though his genuine enthusiasm had noticeably dimmed with each passing month of her pregnancy. When Lily was born, Ryan had stayed for exactly 6 months, gradually growing more distant and resentful of the responsibilities parenthood demanded, until one ordinary afternoon, Claire returned home from a doctor's appointment to find his belongings gone entirely, along with a brief, cowardly note explaining he simply wasn't ready for this kind of life. Devastated and terrified, Claire had been forced to rebuild her entire existence from nothing, working multiple jobs while caring for her infant daughter alone, her own family offering what support they could manage, though the crushing weight of single motherhood had fallen almost entirely upon her own exhausted shoulders. In the years since, Claire had dated only occasionally, cautious and guarded given her painful history, though the pattern had repeated itself with disheartening consistency. Men expressed initial interest, charmed by her warmth and genuine kindness, only to withdraw considerably once they discovered she came with a young daughter already attached, unwilling to accept the responsibility and complexity of a ready-made family. She had grown accustomed to this painful cycle, learning gradually to protect her heart, and more importantly, Lily's heart, by waiting considerably longer before introducing any potential partner into her daughter's life. Ethan's cruel public rejection had simply been the latest, though certainly the most humiliating, chapter in this exhausting familiar pattern. Now, reflecting on Dante's unexpectedly gentle patience with Lily during their recent bakery encounter, Claire found herself cautiously hopeful, though years of painful experience had taught her genuine caution regarding such hope. One quiet evening, as Dante walked her home following another one of his regular visits to the bakery, Claire finally decided to share more openly about her difficult history. Lily's father left when she was only 6 months old, she admitted honestly, her voice carrying the weight of old familiar pain. "Since then, I've learned that most men simply aren't willing to accept the responsibility of loving someone else's child, regardless of how genuinely they might care about me." Dante listened intently, genuine empathy evident clearly in his composed expression. "That must have been incredibly difficult," he said sincerely, "facing that kind of abandonment, and then repeatedly facing similar rejection since." Claire nodded, appreciation evident clearly in her tired expression. "I've grown protective, understandably," she admitted honestly, Not just of my own heart, but especially of Lily's. She's already lost one father figure. I refuse to let her attach herself to someone else, only to lose them too." Dante considered her words seriously, sincerity evident clearly in his thoughtful gaze. "That's an entirely reasonable instinct," he said firmly. "Though I hope in time I might prove myself worthy of your trust and hers, rather than simply being lumped alongside those who've failed you both previously." Claire studied him closely, warmth spreading through her at his genuine, patient sincerity. "You've already shown considerably more patience and genuine kindness than most," she admitted honestly. "That doesn't go unnoticed, Dante." Their conversation continued deepening as they walked slowly toward her apartment. Claire, finding herself increasingly comfortable sharing pieces of her difficult history, appreciating Dante's consistent, genuine patience, rather than any pressure to rush toward deeper commitment before she felt genuinely ready. As they reached her building, Dante paused thoughtfully. "I understand your caution completely," he said sincerely. "I'm not asking you to rush anything, Claire. I simply want the opportunity to prove, through consistent action rather than empty words, that I'm genuinely different." Claire felt tears forming unexpectedly at his heartfelt sincerity. "Thank you for understanding that," she said softly. Gratitude evident clearly in her warm voice as their friendship continued deepening steadily over the following weeks. Dante made a consistent point of including Lily naturally within their growing relationship, never forcing the connection, simply allowing genuine warmth and patience to build trust gradually between them all. Lily, in turn, began looking forward to Dante's visits with increasing excitement, her natural childhood instincts recognizing genuine kindness considerably faster than adult caution typically allowed. Neither Claire nor Dante yet realized clearly. However, that word of his growing, gentle attachment to a bakery worker and her young daughter had already begun spreading quietly among his own associates, several of whom found themselves genuinely curious, and in some cases concerned, about this uncharacteristic softness emerging within their usually guarded, formidable leader. Marco, Dante's most trusted associate, had noticed the change in his boss over recent weeks. Subtle at first, then increasingly evident with each passing day. Dante had begun leaving the office earlier, smiling more genuinely during otherwise routine conversations, and on more than one occasion, Marco had caught him quietly checking his phone with an expression considerably softer than his usual composed, business-like demeanor. "You've been different lately," Marco observed carefully one afternoon, watching Dante prepare to leave for what had become a fairly predictable evening visit to the small bakery across town. "Happier, I'd say." Dante offered a small, knowing smile, though he didn't immediately confirm or deny Marco's careful observation. "Perhaps I've simply found something worth genuinely valuing outside of business matters," he said honestly. Marco studied him closely, genuine curiosity evident clearly in his thoughtful expression. "This is about the bakery worker, isn't it? And her daughter." Dante considered his response seriously before answering honestly. "Claire and her daughter Lily," he confirmed. "I've grown genuinely fond of them both these past weeks." Marco hesitated before continuing carefully. "Boss, you understand the complications this could introduce," he said seriously. "Given your position, given the enemies who would gladly exploit any personal attachment as genuine vulnerability." Dante's expression grew serious, though determination remained evident clearly beneath his thoughtful consideration. "I'm aware of the risks," he said firmly. "I don't intend to hide who I am from Claire indefinitely." "Nor do I intend to abandon this genuine connection simply out of caution," Marco nodded, respecting his boss's evident resolve despite his own lingering concern. "I'll ensure appropriate security measures are quietly implemented," he said seriously, "given the circumstances." Meanwhile, Ethan, having spent the following weeks processing his own regret over his cruel public rejection of Claire and Lily, found himself increasingly troubled by guilt regarding his careless behavior. Word had reached him, through mutual acquaintances, that Claire had begun spending considerable time with a mysterious, well-dressed man who visited the bakery regularly. and jealousy soon compounded his existing guilt considerably. One afternoon, Ethan arrived unannounced at the bakery, determined to properly apologize and, if possible, rekindle what he had so carelessly discarded. He found Claire behind the counter, her expression shifting quickly from surprise into visible discomfort at his unexpected appearance. "Claire, I need to talk to you," Ethan said quickly, genuine nervousness evident clearly in his hurried tone. "I've been thinking about what happened, and I realize now how wrong I was." Claire studied him carefully, old hurt resurfacing briefly, despite her considerable emotional growth over recent weeks. "That's certainly a change from your previous position," she said evenly, though clear-guardedness remained evident in her measured tone. "I panicked," Ethan admitted honestly, genuine regret evident clearly in his expression. "I was foolish, Claire, and I'd like the chance to make things right. With you and with Lily." Before Claire could properly respond, the bakery's door chimed again, Dante entering for his now regular evening visit. He paused immediately upon noticing Ethan's presence, his expression shifting into careful, protective composure as he studied the tense scene unfolding before him. Claire, sensing the sudden shift in atmosphere, made a quick, deliberate decision. "Ethan," she said firmly, "I appreciate you coming to apologize, genuinely, but I've moved forward since that afternoon, and I don't believe returning to what we had would be right for either of us, especially not Lily." Ethan's expression fell considerably, disappointment evident clearly in his features as he glanced briefly toward Dante, understanding gradually dawning within his crestfallen expression. "I see," he said quietly, genuine acceptance eventually replacing his earlier hopeful nervousness. "I hope you're genuinely happy, Claire. You and Lily both deserve that." Once Ethan departed, considerably more humbled than when he had arrived, Dante approached Claire carefully, concern evident clearly in his composed expression. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. Claire smiled warmly, genuine relief evident clearly in her calm expression. "I'm more than all right," she said honestly. "I realize just now how completely I've moved forward from that painful chapter." Dante studied her closely, warmth and quiet happiness evident clearly in his own composed features. "I'm genuinely glad to hear that," he said sincerely, as their bond continued deepening steadily in the days that followed. Dante finally decided the time had come for complete honesty regarding his true profession and the genuine complications it might introduce into their growing relationship. "Claire," he began carefully one evening, "there's something important I need to share with you about who I truly am." Claire listened attentively as Dante explained honestly about his position leading a powerful organization, watching her expression shift through surprise and careful consideration as she processed this significant revelation. "That's certainly not what I expected," she admitted honestly, though notably fear didn't dominate her measured reaction. "Though I'll admit the patience and genuine kindness you've shown Lily and me these past weeks matter considerably more to me than any assumption about your profession." Dante felt profound relief and gratitude flooding through him at her thoughtful, understanding response. Neither he nor Claire yet realized clearly, however, that this honest conversation had come just in time, as a dangerous rival had already begun taking careful, calculated notice of Dante's growing attachment to the bakery worker and her young daughter. Salvatore Greco had been searching for weeks for any genuine weakness within Dante Marchetti's carefully guarded organization, frustrated by his rival's consistent refusal to allow personal attachments that might otherwise be exploited for strategic advantage. When his own informants finally reported Dante's growing, genuine attachment to a bakery worker and her young daughter, Salvatore felt a surge of calculated satisfaction at finally discovering exactly the vulnerability he had been searching for. "Marchetti's finally shown his hand," Salvatore said coldly during a private meeting with his most trusted associates. "A woman and her child, someone he clearly cares for deeply enough to visit regularly, entirely unprotected by his usual security measures." His associates exchanged uneasy glances, aware clearly of the seriousness behind Salvatore's calculated tone. How do you intend to proceed? One asked cautiously. We take the child, Salvatore replied firmly. Not to harm her, simply to demonstrate clearly that Marchetti's personal attachments make him considerably more vulnerable than his reputation suggests. It will force him to reconsider his territorial expansion into regions I consider rightfully mine. Unaware of this calculated, dangerous plan forming against them, Claire continued her regular routine, genuinely happy for the first time in years, as her relationship with Dante continued flourishing steadily. Lily, too, had grown increasingly attached to Dante's gentle, consistent presence in their lives, often asking eagerly when he might visit next. One afternoon, while Rachel watched Lily briefly at the neighborhood park during Claire's shift, two of Salvatore's men approached quietly, having carefully studied the family's routine over recent days. Exploiting a brief moment when Rachel's attention was drawn toward another distressed child nearby, they moved swiftly, attempting to lure Lily toward a waiting vehicle with promises of candy and a lost puppy needing help. Fortunately, Lily, having been carefully taught about stranger danger, immediately grew suspicious and began crying loudly, drawing considerable attention from nearby parents before the men could successfully complete their attempted abduction. Rachel, alerted immediately by the commotion, rushed forward just as park security intervened, the frightened men fleeing quickly before they could be properly identified or apprehended. When Claire received the frantic call from her sister, panic and terror crashed over her instantly. She rushed immediately to the park, finding Lily shaken but physically unharmed, wrapped tightly in Rachel's protective embrace. "Mommy!" Lily cried, rushing into Claire's arms the moment she arrived. "I'm here. Baby, I'm here," Claire reassured her daughter. Though her own hands trembled considerably as she held Lily close, relief and lingering terror mixing intensely within her, Claire immediately called Dante, her voice shaking as she explained what had happened. Dante's response was immediate and decisive, arriving within minutes alongside several of his most trusted men, his usual composed demeanor replaced entirely by fierce, protective urgency. "Are you both all right?" he asked urgently, kneeling immediately to properly check on Lily himself, genuine relief evident clearly in his tense expression. Upon confirming she remained unharmed. "We're okay," Claire replied, though clear fear remained evident in her trembling voice. "But Dante, someone tried to take her. This wasn't random." Dante's expression hardened instantly, understanding immediately the seriousness of what had occurred. "This is connected to me," he admitted honestly, guilt and fierce anger evident clearly beneath his controlled exterior. "I should have anticipated this risk sooner and increased your protection accordingly." Claire studied him closely, fear and understanding mixing within her. "Who would do this?" she asked directly, though she suspected clearly the answer connected somehow to Dante's complicated world. "Salvatore Greco," Dante explained grimly, "a rival who's clearly identified my attachment to you and Lily as an opportunity to weaken my position." Claire felt overwhelming fear at this revelation, though determination quickly replaced her initial terror. "What do we do now?" she asked firmly, refusing to allow fear to paralyze her when her daughter's safety remained genuinely at stake. Dante took her hands gently, sincerity and fierce protectiveness evident clearly in his intense gaze. "I promise you, Claire, I will end this threat completely," he said firmly. "You and Lily will have round-the-clock protection immediately. And I intend to ensure Salvatore faces serious, immediate consequences for endangering an innocent child." Working quickly and decisively alongside Marco and his most trusted men, Dante began gathering intelligence regarding Salvatore's location and operations, determined to neutralize the threat before any further danger could reach Claire and Lily. Meanwhile, Claire and Lily remained under careful, constant protection within Dante's own secure estate. Claire finding herself genuinely grateful for his immediate, decisive action despite the frightening circumstances that had necessitated it. "I never wanted to put you both in danger," Dante admitted quietly that evening. watching Lily finally fall asleep peacefully within the estate's guest room, exhaustion finally overtaking her earlier fear. This is exactly the complication I feared when I first considered pursuing genuine feelings for you. Claire studied him closely, warmth and understanding evident clearly in her tired expression. You didn't create this danger, Dante, she said firmly. Salvatore did through his own reckless cruelty. I don't regret choosing you, even knowing the risks. Dante felt profound gratitude and renewed determination at her genuine, unwavering support. Then I intend to end this threat completely, he said resolutely, ensuring you and Lily never have to face this kind of danger again. As Dante's men worked tirelessly through the night gathering crucial intelligence, both he and Claire understood clearly that the coming confrontation with Salvatore would determine not only their family's immediate safety, but the entire future they had only just begun building together. Working through the night with Marco and his most trusted associates, Dante successfully traced Salvatore Greco's operations to a warehouse on the outskirts of the city, gathering enough evidence of his reckless, unauthorized attack on an innocent child to justify decisive immediate action. By morning, Dante's men had surrounded the location, moving carefully and methodically to neutralize the threat, while minimizing any further risk to innocent bystanders. Salvatore, upon realizing his carefully planned scheme had failed and his location had been fully compromised, attempted a desperate escape, only to be swiftly intercepted and apprehended by Dante's experienced men. Facing overwhelming evidence of his reckless endangerment of a child, evidence that would prove deeply damaging to his reputation and standing among other powerful families, Salvatore found himself with no meaningful leverage remaining. You made a serious mistake targeting an innocent child, Dante said coldly, confronting Salvatore directly once he had been securely detained. This ends now, completely and permanently. Salvatore, recognizing the complete collapse of his reckless scheme, offered no further resistance, understanding clearly the serious consequences awaiting him for such a reckless, dishonorable attack. With Salvatore's threat fully neutralized and his standing among other criminal organizations thoroughly destroyed by his own reckless actions, the danger to Claire and Lily finally completely passed. When Dante returned to his estate that morning, exhausted but triumphant, he found Claire waiting anxiously, relief flooding through her instantly upon seeing him safely returned. It's over, he said softly, gently pulling her into a warm embrace. Salvatore's threat has been completely neutralized. You and Lily are safe. Claire felt overwhelming relief crash over her, tears of gratitude forming gently in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered softly, for protecting us so completely. Dante studied her closely, sincerity and profound love evident clearly in his composed expression. Protecting you and Lily isn't simply an obligation, he said firmly. It's exactly what love means to me. In the weeks that followed, with the danger fully resolved, life gradually settled into a peaceful, joyful rhythm for their newly formed family. Claire and Lily moved permanently into Dante's estate, Lily quickly adapting to her new surroundings with the natural resilience and joy only a child could manage, her bond with Dante deepening steadily into something genuinely resembling a father's love. One quiet evening, as they sat together watching the sunset from the estate's peaceful garden, Dante turned toward Claire, sincerity clear in his warm expression. Claire, he began softly, these past months have shown me exactly what genuine family means. I'd like to make that official if you're willing. Claire studied him closely, her heart racing as she registered the small, elegant ring Dante produced carefully from his pocket. Dante, she whispered, overwhelmed with genuine happiness. I love you completely, Dante said sincerely, and I love Lily as though she were genuinely my own daughter. Will you marry me and allow me the honor of building a real, lasting family alongside you both? Tears of overwhelming joy streamed down Claire's face as she nodded quickly. Yes, she whispered softly. Absolutely, yes. Lily, who had been playing nearby, rushed over excitedly upon noticing her mother's tears of happiness. "Are you getting married?" she asked eagerly, genuine excitement evident clearly in her innocent expression. Dante knelt down gently to her level, warmth and genuine love evident clearly in his composed features. "We are," he confirmed softly. "And Lily, I'd be honored if you'd consider me family too. For as long as you'll have me." Lily beamed brightly, throwing her small arms around Dante's neck in an enthusiastic embrace. "I'd like that," she said happily, genuine joy evident clearly in her innocent voice. Their wedding, held quietly within the same peaceful garden months later, celebrated not simply the union between Claire and Dante, but the genuine, lasting family they had built together, proving considerably stronger and more meaningful than any of the painful rejection Claire had endured throughout her difficult, exhausting years as a single mother. Reflecting quietly that evening, watching Dante lift Lily happily onto his shoulders as their small wedding celebration continued joyfully around them, Claire considered deeply the remarkable, unexpected journey that had led her from devastating public humiliation toward genuine, lasting happiness. What had begun with Ethan's cruel, careless rejection outside a small neighborhood bakery ultimately transformed into something Claire had never imagined possible. A genuine, loving family built entirely on authentic acceptance, proving clearly that true love embraces every part of the people we cherish, rather than rejecting the very qualities that make them genuinely whole.